There we go. Good morning, and we will go ahead and call to order our MAPS 4 Citizens Advisory Board meeting, January 4th, 2024. Items 2, and items for individual consideration. A, approval of minutes of the December 7th MAPS meeting. They were included in your packet. Any changes or corrections? If
Yeah,
not,
Teresa,
yes.
I have one on page 3 of the minutes and item 2F. I noticed that on the recommended approval, it was moved by Pace, seconded by Pace. I appreciate your influence, but I'm not sure you have the power. I don't know who seconded that. I don't know if we have a record of that or not. It's not terribly important, but if we can identify that and indicate who
and
seconded
make that correction.
the motion.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you for noticing that, Bob. Anything else? So with that modification, I will take a motion in a second to approve the minutes. Please cast your votes. The motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 2B, receive the MAPS 4 monthly financial report ending November 30th, 2023.
You have in your packet the monthly financial report on the revenue side for the month, $12,859,543 for fiscal year of $76,740,163 and a total of $473,903,603. I want to draw your attention to the current 2.8% over projections. So roughly $12.5 million right now. On the expenditure side for the month, $2,595,514, fiscal year of $21,213,332, and total of $189,343,246.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Todd? Okay. If not, we'll take a motion in a second to receive. Cast your votes, please. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 2C, presentation on the progress report of the MAPS 4 homeless projects.
Periodically, we like to bring you a report on the homelessness project. Cassie Malone is here today from Oklahoma City Housing Authority to give you an update on what's going on.
Welcome, Cassie.
Thank you.
Thank you
Good
for
morning.
being here.
Okay, so this is just an overview of the timeline since the Oklahoma City Housing Authority has been awarded the operating agreement. So since we last met, we had a few things happen. We did issue the RFP for the qualified contractor pool in September. We had a few respondents to that, so we were very pleased. In March, we published the MAPS 4 housing website. And in November of 2023, our board approved the purchase of Vita Nova, which I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on a later slide. In December of 2023, the survey reports were reported at the City Council. And in December of 2023, we acquired the Vita Nova property. Our plan for March of 2024 is to finalize the electronic comment system that will be integrated into the Housing Authority's website. And then in April of 2024, that is when all of those requirements listed in the operating agreement will be reported. And then in May of 2024, we anticipate beginning coordination for the next annual survey. This is an overview of where we are on our benchmarks for housing units that will be developed or rehabbed. So the blue represents allocated funding, and the yellow represents funding that has been committed from that first allocation. This is an overview of the 3 items that are listed in the operating agreement as being required to be completed within that first year. So the first one is a long-term supportive housing plan. We did issue an RFP for that. We did not get any respondents to that RFP, so we are kind of going back and coming up with some different strategies to be able to get that plan completed. The next is a results-based reporting system. So that is currently in the development stage. That's paired with a grant from Inasmuch. So in addition to that reporting system, we also were able to hire a full-time staff person to answer phone calls and keep track of any comments that came in. We have purchased the software for that. It's called Issue Track, and staff is currently going through training, and we are finalizing it being integrated into the Housing Authority's website. The next one, I got 2 and 3 mixed up. So I just gave you the update on electronic formal comment system. I'm going to go back to number 2, which is a results-based reporting system. So that is in the development stage as well. We are utilizing the results from the survey and other reports in order to finalize that.
Can I ask a quick question before you leave this slide? What is an electronic formal comment system?
It is basically just a way for somebody to go onto our website, fill out a form or submit a comment or concern, and it gives us the ability for that to be done anonymously and still be trackable, and so that we can respond to it. This is an update on the survey. The final report was presented in December. This is also paired with a grant from Inasmuch Foundation to allow for us to give incentives to respondents. We did have enough funding remaining where we will be able to also give incentives for next year's survey. This is an overview of the 4 projects that were approved as part of allocation number 1. So the first project is that supportive housing number 1. That is Vita Nova. I promise I'm going to go into more in-depth details in the next slide. But that is located at 1800 East Reno. The project budget is about $6.5 million, and that is currently in pre-development. There's not really been any other changes to the other 3 projects. We are still in the planning for the second supportive housing. We are still in pre-development for Oak Grove, which is located across from the Dell campus in southwest Oklahoma City. And then Creston Park Phase 2 on the northeast side of Oklahoma City along MLK is still in the planning phase. This slide is just to show an overview of where we were when the allocation was approved and where we are today. So you'll see in the teal color, that is Vita Nova, or the supportive housing project number 1. Originally, the approved MAPS allocation was $2.5 million. What we did is we increased that to $3 million. And then we took $500,000 out of the Creston Park Phase 2. So as it's stated in the operating agreement, we can make adjustments as long as they are not over 20%. So that is where that adjustment came from. On the leveraged amount, all of the leveraged amounts remain the same as the allocation, except for the supportive housing number 1. That anticipated leveraged amount is now at $3.5 million. So this is the supportive housing number 1, also known as Vita Nova. It is, scooch my page over. It will be the first supportive housing development part of the MAPS 4 homelessness program. This development will serve individuals experiencing chronic homelessness who would otherwise not qualify for housing subsidy due to a conviction history. The development will feature subsidized housing along with on-site wraparound services. So the property will convert a former Motel 6 hotel into a 75-unit apartment complex. They will be studio apartments. The residential side of the building is just over 16,000 square feet. The entire site is about 3.5 acres. It was built in 1969 and then renovated in 2004. The subsidy type and the property type is proposed to be 100% subsidized with housing choice vouchers. 80% of those will be project-based, which means they will be attached to the unit. The remaining 20% will be traditional mobile vouchers. We did that to really allow for a little bit of flexibility. So if there is an administrative lag time in getting somebody approved for a voucher. They can still be housed while we work through that process. The purchase price for the property was $3,750,000, with estimated renovations being about $2.2 million. We are currently in the pre-development design stage. We anticipate completion to be in about 9 to 12 months. This is a preliminary unit floor plan. So that picture that you see in the top left, that is an actual room at this property. The property is in great condition. So along with the property, we also were able to keep all of the furniture. So in supportive housing, that's really a huge thing because residents now will have a fully furnished unit that they can move into. So where you'll see that little table, that is where we are proposing to add a kitchenette. The kitchenette will include a stovetop, sink, and a refrigerator. Every unit is going to be about 312 square feet. It will feature a full bath, a kitchenette, and a designated living and sleeping area. The exterior, it's in fairly decent condition. We do anticipate a few renovations to the exterior that I'm going to go into in a later slide, but as far as this, we are anticipating freshening up with some paint and replacing the locking mechanisms on the doors. So this is an overview of the entire building. This is really what made this property special to us and why we thought it was an amazing opportunity. So on the eastern portion of the building, there is a large former community event space. It is approximately 19,000 square feet, and it also currently has a commercial kitchen. So as soon as we saw that, we thought, Workforce Incubator, this is a great opportunity to really take a holistic approach to supportive housing. Residents can receive case management, housing stability, but also the ability to learn a trade and be employed all in one site. On top of that, commercial kitchen with a designated dining space that will basically function as a restaurant open to the public. There will also be leasable office space and classroom space for that to be taught the curriculum for the commercial kitchen and Workforce Incubator. In the blue, you see space that is designated for residential use, residential operational use. So that includes office space for the embedded on-site case management and service providers, as well as a gym for the residents and also some community space. So just a little bit more detail about the commercial kitchen and kind of the thought process and the curriculum for that. Oklahoma City has one of the largest clusters of tourism and hospitality in the United States. So one of our goals with this is to really look at the holistic approach to housing stability and self-sufficiency for the residents. They will have access to a program that allows for them to increase their skills and to gain employment. So that curriculum looks at student development all the way from financial, culinary, marketing, life skills training, all the way up to management and potential business ownership. This is the overall preliminary site plan. So we are proposing to fence off the entire site. That really is intended to make sure that public areas are designated as public and private areas are designated as private. There will be an access controlled gate, so the residential parking area will be reserved for the residents, and then the commercial parking area will be reserved for the commercial uses. There is currently a large courtyard area around the residential area. It does currently have a pool. We are proposing to fill that pool in and really add a lot of landscaping and green space to make that a very enjoyable place for our residents to be. It does abut a highway, so in addition to adding double pane windows to limit noise into the dwelling areas, we are also working with our engineers to create a noise buffer on the southern part of the property. On the western side of the property, we are proposing to add in some raised garden beds and seating areas, as well as in the lower portion of the courtyard area, a designated dog park and dog run area. When we were looking at what this site could possibly have included in it, we did utilize some best practices. We traveled down to Fort Worth. They have a property that has undergone a conversion similar to this. And we toured that property, we spoke with the housing authority that operates that property, and we really were able to pull some things that worked and look at things that weren't working. This is the overall budget. So we have adjusted the supportive housing number 1. It is now $3 million. Creston Park Phase 2 is now the $2 million. We have expended all of the $3 million out of supportive housing number 1 for the purchase of the property. And then in the pre-development, we have obligated about $92,000, and then we have expended about $18,000. And that is all I have. I am happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Casey?
Hi, Casey. How are you?
I'm good.
Happy New Year.
You too.
Do you happen to have any photos of the Fort Worth site you all visited?
I can share the link that they've got it all online, but I can share the link that has all of the information and the photographs.
I'd like to see that. While I'm excited about the interior, and I'm excited about, of course, the critical wraparound services, I do have concerns about the exterior. I'm not saying anything I haven't said before, and that I'm sure you all haven't heard from various sources, but there were such dire, bad approaches to apartments in the 70s and 80s that we're all very well aware of. All we need to do is drive down 10th Street heading to Council, and we'll see the results of what happens when we see nodding heads. Let's not stand on sacred ground here and pretend that we don't know what those apartments look like, what happens when we design them incorrectly in ways that do not foster community. And the design I think about a lot. I'm actually kind of obsessed with it. And if, as Citizens Advisory Board members and as Fair Housing Authority people, if y'all have not had a chance to go to Northwest Classen and 29th Street and just go a little bit west, you'll see, I think it's about 6 to 8 homes that Jefferson Park Neighborhood Association, using Chodo dollars, were able to design. And it is where each of those 4 houses with porches face each other. And it's something so small like that that fosters community. I am seeing people with planning experience in the crowd right now nodding their head because I learned it from them. But it literally is, when you go and you look at, and I just can't stress this enough to this board, that if you have not seen this housing, it is critical that we go look at it. Do you know the housing I'm talking about?
I do.
So when I look at, as I was looking at your presentation, and then I just did a simple Google image search of Motel 6 OKC Reno Avenue, and then when I saw your presentation of that exterior, I'm not convinced that that exterior is going to foster the sort of community that we need. And I'd like to see more detail from you all in terms of what that exterior is going to look like. I am very excited as I was driving to Midwest City to take my mom to the doctor yesterday, when I see FAM and I see that development along the river, and we know about the damming of the water and these things. I think there are good things coming around that area, but we also just can't forget that for so long the city and private development has just neglected Reno Avenue. And so we now, I think, have to be very intentional about how we design the exterior. We cannot repeat the old projects and the old apartment designs of the 70s and 80s. These kids who grow up here, if we don't get this right, will become the kids who are much more susceptible to gang activity, white supremacy groups. Those are very similar things. They might sound different from each other, but when people don't have a connection to family and community, they become susceptible to demagogues and faux family. I went on at length there because it's just that critical. So when Do you agree or disagree? Do you hear what I'm saying? I guess is kind of the first thing. I don't want to just speak into the void right now.
Yes, no, absolutely, we agree. We are very passionate about urban design and how it impacts both the residents living there and the community at large. We are in the planning stages, so we welcome any input that you all have in regards to the design and kind of how we make that look more like a home and less like a hotel.
So is there a time that you all could come back and present to us what that exterior, because I can tell you, I didn't see any trees, for instance, and there's a lot of research we know about communities where poverty is extensive, and unfortunately, disproportionately, that affects people of color, though not limited to. And we know that in those neighborhoods, there's just been a lack of trees, and that means a lack of cooling and a lack of shade. And I didn't see a single bit of that in that asphalt parking lot.
Right, there's not any trees there currently. That picture is what it looks like right now. So where we are right now, we've just acquired the property. We are getting our architects and engineers on board, and then we will be finalizing the site plan and the design. So everything I've shown you today is just our preliminary plan and design. So there's landscaping in the budget, there is exterior improvements in the budget, and all of those will be finalized in more detail. And we can give that update at our next quarterly update, or we can come earlier once we have those plans finalized.
I'll let the chair decide whether it's quarterly or the next time. I guess my ask going forward is, in this early moment, I think it makes a lot of sense going forward when there are projects like this for you all to consider the sort of things that I'm saying at this early moment. I think we need to be that intentional because we are trying to undo decades worth of crime and poverty in this city. And I just think we have to be so intentional, about the work we're doing. So I'd like to see in the earlier moments, at least, you don't have to say this is exactly what it's gonna look like, but an X here for a tree or X here for, murals and landscaping. But I'm excited about what you all are doing, but I have to bring that constructive criticism to this moment. So, thank you.
Can I add something to that?
Oh,
If
please.
you're done. I didn't want to interrupt. I did want to point out, there is that courtyard. I don't have a sense of how big that is, but in our subcommittee meeting, I wanted to also add that strip along the, I don't know what direction it is.
The western side.
Thank you. Didn't you say that the residents will have some say in what goes there? I think that will actually go a long way in, fostering some of that, I guess, connection to nature that you might be looking for. I just wanted to make sure those two things didn't get missed.
Could you go back to that slide, please?
So I think what you're talking about is in the yellow.
Right.
Yes.
I think that's good. I think that courtyard is a good thing. I'm curious and hopeful about the outdoor seating and playground. What I see problematically is just all that asphalt. That was the old parking spaces, and this is right up against a giant interstate. We are up against concrete and asphalt, and we have to be very intentional about how we greenscape this. And everyone up here should ask yourselves, would you live there? That's what you need to start asking yourselves. This is not for those people. You now need to start asking yourself, with your $67,000, $80,000 a year salaries or whatever you might have, would you live here? And if the answer is no, you got to start asking yourself why and what's missing. We must no longer just think the ways old planning folk used to think. Would you live here? And if not, why not? And use your ability on this seat right now to start adding those suggestions about why you wouldn't.
Well, and I think, I would just add that I think the courtyard is going to be a great opportunity. I think y'all are going to, I'm looking forward to seeing how y'all utilize that space, whether it's, set covers or landscaping trees, but I think that courtyard can be a really neat, very a convening place for the residents. Any other questions? Bob?
Maybe you haven't gotten to that point yet, but I'm just curious about your thinking down the road in terms of how the housing authority intends to staff this location. Are you going to have a sort of a resident manager on site, somebody to do maintenance as it comes up? How you're planning to get workforce training agency partners in to assist people? How much of that's on site as opposed to, doing something off site? And again, maybe it's too early to deal with some of that, but if you give me just a capsule overview of that.
Absolutely, definitely not too early. So we have put out a 20-year operating pro forma to make sure that this property will be sustainable and operational for the next 20-plus years. So that staffing plan, what that looks like is we will have an on-site property manager, we will have on-site maintenance, we will have security. It will function through the Oklahoma City Housing, the security staff that we already have, but we are still in the preliminary plans of whether or not that's on-site or just on call. We will do a embedded case manager that is staffed by the Oklahoma City Housing Authority. That will kind of be our light touch service provider. And then we will partner with other service providers through the Homeless Alliance to provide that on-site embedded case management, as well as partnering with other service providers and other programs such as the Diversion Hub and things like that, to make sure that this property is both sustainable and structured in a way where residents are getting the services that they need.
Do you anticipate the kitchen to be used for daily food service, or will that be a training facility for culinary arts, or how do you see that functioning?
Well, it won't have a daily food service, so this will not be, residents will be independent in that they will have their kitchenette, so they will be responsible for providing their own meals. That restaurant area, of course, will be open to them to go and be a customer at or to receive training at, but they can utilize our 5310, the Housing Authority and Community Enhancement Corporation, which is OCHA's nonprofit instrumentality. We have a 5310 bus. We have 3 5310 buses that are funded through a grant that Embark oversees. That will be our transportation system. It will eventually be incorporated into the overall Embark system, so our residents can utilize that system free of charge and basically get where they need to go if they don't have a vehicle.
Thanks. I'm sure we'll get more of that as we move along, but just wanted a sense of where we were headed on those functions at this location. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Daisy?
Yes. You said for the long-term supportive housing plan RFP that you received no responses for that. Can you tell us a little bit about your plan to reopen the RFP?
So we're still kind of looking at if the best strategy is to reissue the RFP, so that the particular information that we're looking for is extremely nuanced and very hard to gather. We do understand that the city has already gone through a couple of quite intensive planning processes looking at affordable housing and chronic homelessness and that population. So we're really hoping to pull information from those studies and then work through it so we can utilize information that's already been gathered and not duplicate.
Other questions? Okay, yes.
Thank you for presenting this again. I saw you 2 days ago. Nice to see you again. One thing I think we haven't talked about, I didn't get a chance to talk about it before, was I'm really excited about the commercial kitchen and it as an incubator. I think there's a lot of overlap between humans who find themselves looking to hospitality as their job because they've come on hard times in some other way. So to me, this feels like a really lovely intersection of a place people can live, but then also develop their talents to actually hopefully go beyond this as their place that they live. To James's point, to me, this looks very temporary. Seems like a place that you might be able to live for a couple of years, but it's not looking like the place that you would want to build your home, your life home, to raise your kids in, if you could help it, right? That's what I see when I see this. I do think that the room looks like it's in incredibly great condition, considering that this is affordable housing. So things like that, I think, are on the right track. To James's point about landscaping, if the one little, I do raised gardens, I do all kinds of landscaping in my own home. That west wall is going to be really difficult growing conditions for food. So because of the nature of how the light is going to come in from the east to the west. So I do wonder if there are other kind of considerations around if the courtyard has more accessibility for that, or more intentional green space where it's not really just, hey, we put this in thinking it would work, when it's really not the optimal conditions for growing. Maybe that is just more of like a landscaping that is implemented and just stays. It could be an ivy wall, all kinds of things that can help with heat and things along those lines. Do the units themselves have access to the courtyard from like their exterior, I guess?
Yes, so every room, whether it on the interior or exterior, has access to the courtyard.
Okay, so they will have hopefully a lot of green space within a few steps, which is awesome. Just to kind of add to what James was speaking about, I think we have to be really conscientious of development like this, especially as it abuts to highways, because many interstates were erected through neighborhoods that were disproportionately affected by that impact of that. So it's like we have a lot of undoing to do to make these spaces really healthy. But I do think this project is well on its way to being that, especially considering we have a strong need for it. And again, the commercial kitchen as a mechanism to get people on their feet, I think, is a really smart way to kind of integrate the people who might find themselves living here and giving them actually an option, like giving them a pathway to success go forward. So I appreciate your time and your comments and the work on the project.
Did you say who would be, let me just double down on everything I've heard so far. These are good questions and suggestions. Did you say who would be operating the workforce component?
No, I haven't. We are still in the preliminary stages of planning that. There are a few state programs, and we've been speaking with them, but we are still finalizing what that looks like and the curriculum and all of the potential partners.
Okay. Do you anticipate in subsequent housing similar workforce components?
I think that is one of our goals. So in Creston Park, that development, it also features a workforce incubator kitchen. That one is geared more towards students who have aged out of one program and don't qualify for another. So that one's programming is a little bit different. But I think moving forward, any public housing recapitalization or redevelopment of a property, we really try to look at integrating some type of employment possibility as well as that service opportunity, so that community center where education can be brought on site and service providers can be brought on site. So our properties will either be service integrated with that community space on site, or they will be connected where that service community center will be within a short distance.
Okay. Well, it has my attention just because of the community benefits agreement that council approved, which has that strong workforce intermediary hiring hall component. So as you all move along, that's something that I'll probably want to regroup with you all once we've kind of got that up and going, but that's at least a year from now. And then just one final thing that Chelsea made me think about that would be kind of my encouragement to you all. And also, I have had an espresso this morning. I hope my tone wasn't, mean. I'm trying to be encouraging, and you all are taking on a lot. I mean, to Chelsea's point, you're taking on decades worth of not getting it right. So just want to applaud you for doing that work. But something I heard on PBS NewsHour the other day by one of Oklahoma's own reporters, Adam Kemp, and proud Ward 2 resident, he was talking about how when it comes to renting right now, right, and I'm probably not saying things most of you already haven't heard, but some of you would come as a surprise. Right now when it comes to renting versus homeownership, it's kind of a smarter move right now to rent. Yeah. And it's probably going to be a smarter move to rent for a while. And I've been feeling this as a millennial. You know, you have to pay the broker, you have to pay the mortgage interest rate, even though you get the deduction. You have the cost if something goes wrong. These things start eating at you the way that if someone's renting, they could be using that to invest in any other kind of thing, right? So that there's these trade-offs now that people are starting to ask themselves when it comes to renting versus home ownerships. And the higher interest rates are only exacerbating that. And who knows if that's 5 years from now that those come down, et cetera. But those first variables I mentioned are going to be that's just part of housing. All that to say, to Chelsea's point, a lot of us are thinking about renting as a long-term endeavor, and we're not thinking about home ownership. I'm 41. There's a really strong chance I never own a home, ever. And that is a very purposeful decision. Someone should want to live here for all 18 years that they're raising their child. Or if it's someone who without a child, they are right around the corner from fam. You know, this should be, that's why I'm so passionate about us getting this right. And however we can help you do that, let us know. But these are kind of the things that I'm interested in, is that landscaping. I love that food stuff, the workforce. And then back to Madam Chair, like whenever you think they should, it's appropriate for them to come back. And I'd like to see at that time that Fort Worth link.
Sure. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you so much for being here and for your work on this project.
Thank
It's
you.
very important to our city.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to item 2D, presentation on Bike Walk OKC.
So in the past, the subcommittee has seen presentation on Bike Walk OKC, and we've referred to that many times here with projects that we have, and the question came up a month or so ago about the document. You can access the document at okc.gov, but Justin Henry from the Planning Department is here to give you a quick kind of overview on the Bike Walk OKC plan document.
Hi, yeah, as David said, I'm Justin Henry from the Oklahoma City Planning Department. Thank you, board members, for having me here today to go over Bike Walk OKC. This Bike Walk OKC was first adopted in 2018. It was the city's first attempt at a citywide pedestrian and cycling plan. Before that, we'd had a lot of smaller area plans, but nothing that was comprehensive. And so this was adopted in 2018, largely to the credit of issues passed by council, including maps. We've made relatively quick work and success of a lot of the projects that were identified in the original plan. And so this was the time to update the plan. We've are finishing that process now. We've had kind of a long public engagement process where we incorporated a lot of ideas we've gotten from the community. And now we're getting into the stage for final adoption. One of the things we've done too is we've kind of changed some of the prioritization process, especially around some of the bike and trail elements work. And so hoping to kind of cover some of that with you today. This was done through a public process. We actually did a 2-year-long public survey that we had up on our website, and we as staff that works on these issues just get regular requests forwarded to us from city council members or other public bodies about where residents are looking for sidewalks and those kind of elements. And so we just record all of those requests we get all the time into our GIS system so that we can create maps, kind of like this is just one example of those, where we're recording the requests that we're getting, we're mapping those out, and we use that as an informative tool as we went through this engagement process. We also had a public board that had members of the City Council and Traffic Commission, Planning Commission, that helped inform a lot of our plan writing. As I mentioned, we've made pretty quick work of the original plan since 2018. Since it was adopted, we've built 176 miles of sidewalks. We've also built 16 miles of multi-use trails, and we've more than doubled our mileage of on-street bike lanes as well, with more to come. We also had performance measures in the original plan. This is in the spot where we've made some change. As courses, we've added a lot of the mileage of sidewalks and bike lanes. We've seen some of our access measures kind of continue to increase, which we expected. But something we felt like was missing from the original plan was enough safety measures. Because one of the big things we're seeing is that even though we're increasing mileages, we're seeing more people walking and biking, we're still seeing too many fatalities and collisions with our pedestrians and cyclists. And so we've added some more performance measures there so we can keep track of that. City Council also just recently approved our use of a consultant that's going to help us write a Vision Zero plan. We won a federal grant that's going to help us really study out our street network and figure out where the most dangerous issues are, what we need to change in the physical infrastructure to make those streets safer. So we're excited to bring that work forward too. Bike Walk OKC breaks our sidewalk elements, our pedestrian elements down into a couple of different categories. You might hear me use the term PPA a couple of times. That's for pedestrian priority area. That was something that was arrived through a lot of analytical data that's in the plan about where responsive populations were, where demographic information like access to a car showed us that some households were more likely to walk, where the land use also permitted people to walk. So in some of our parts of our city, we see less walking than others, partially because there's not anywhere in a reasonable range to walk to. So a lot of times in the inner core, we see a better mix of commercial and office closer to residential, and we see a lot more walking there. And then we also have street enhancements and placemaking, which is a new add, access to transit, schools, and parks, which is something we've done a lot of work on and we're wanting to continue. The original Bike Walk OKC had 10 pedestrian priority areas. This is where a lot of the efforts that came from the 2017 GO bond and the Better Streets, Safer City sales tax really focused on a lot of sidewalk improvements. This new plan, here's an example of what this looks like in the plan. You can see kind of 3 different color lines here. I'll kind of quickly explain that the gold are things that are currently funded or being built. The red are our next top priority, and the green would be the secondary priorities after that. Originally, Bike Walk kind of prioritized based on making specific connections to certain centers. We've kind of reprioritized this a little bit where we're trying to focus on the most dangerous streets first. So you'll see arterials like MacArthur and Northwest 10th Street on here being prioritized over some of the secondary streets because we feel like it's important to improve the safety of those. And then new Bike Walk OKC, it adds 10 additional pedestrian priority areas. You can see a lot of it's kind of growing off of where we were working on before, but as we work through MAPS 4 and some of our other funding sources and complete a lot of those original projects, these will kind of be the areas we grow into next. Here's an example of a new one of those. You'll notice that the map looks a little different. We wanted to provide some extra context on the map so people could kind of see some of the logic of why we picked some of these streets. The green shown here are parks, and the blue are schools. The yellow are bus stops. All 3 of those are very common drivers for pedestrian activity, and we really wanted to make sure we serve those really well in a lot of these. All right, so one of our new categories that we've added is streetscapes and placemaking. This is something that we've been doing for a while. We've had some successes on some of our districts where we're doing these streetscapes. This is really for that extra level of not just basic sidewalks and crosswalks. This is going into really making an area more walkable by things like street trees, public art, deeper fixes. A lot of times we can get into some more of the nuances of intersection design and things like that. And just some pictures of some projects currently in the works. So for these street enhancements, one of the important considerations there is when we do this extra level of having a lot of landscaping and public art and things like that, we really need a partner to help us with kind of the operations side of that and help us kind of engage with the community so that we better understand what the needs of that district are. So we tend to focus these largely around our commercial districts, where we already have partnerships that the planning department works regularly with those commercial districts. So an example of one right now is in Uptown 23rd, where we've been working for several years to redesign a new streetscape there, and it's coming to fruition soon. We know that there's a lot of districts that haven't gotten that kind of treatment recently, and so we anticipate coming forward with that. Also, I believe in kind of the MAPS 4 language, there were some of these districts that were specifically identified as getting this kind of enhancements as well. Another spot where we've made some changes here is access to transit. The original Bike Walk OKC really focused on some of the highest ridership bus stops and kind of dropping some sidewalks around those to improve the access. Unfortunately, the condition you see like in the picture on the top right is all too common in Oklahoma City, where we have maybe a bench or maybe even just a pole and grass with no sidewalk access, and that really limits the amount of users who can access it. And so when Embark improves a stop, they typically only have funding to do a little sidewalk that runs to the nearest corner. And so we want to really, we think it's important to address all the sidewalk needs all along the routes eventually, so. We also want to continue to do, schools and parks especially, our needs outside of those pedestrian priority areas. So we did an analysis about both of those categories as well and have identified a top 20 schools and a top 20 parks that would also, we would call for sidewalk projects around. Pause right there for a second. We'll see if there's any questions before I maybe kind of move into the bicycle part.
Super quick.
Okay.
Capitol Hill on that slide, would you go back to
Sure.
the unfunded? I'm just a bit confused on that one.
Yeah.
My understanding from the work we did with MAPS 4 is we identified Capitol Hill as one of the districts that, we wanted to do streetscape funding for. Why is it unfunded here, I guess is my question.
Really just because MAPS hasn't specifically chosen a project yet for that. And I do think that is kind of coming to you in one of the future phases as well.
We also don't have streetscapes, per se. We have sidewalks, trails, those kind of projects.
In MAPS 4?
Right.
I would encourage everyone to go back and read that resolution carefully. And this has been I'm glad you said that, Director, because this has been a concern. Councilwoman Hammond, Max Harris, Jeff Butler, I was there, Chris Dahlgren, who used to be on Better Streets, Tony Carfing, who's currently on Better Streets. That language is very clear. There are streetscapes. There are streetscapes. And not only are there streetscapes, I'm thrilled about those streetscapes because I got to finalize this language with Mayor Holt. Stockyards, Capitol Hill, Windsor District, Britton District, Clara Looper Corridor. Because we realized that the sidewalk money that we were going to have was not going to go far enough to really make a dent, to really demonstrate to our residents. Would you go back to the Capitol Hill?
Sure.
This is what my residents are asking for. This sort of plaza stuff in front of that church. They want things repurposed for pedestrian access and place-making and gathering, and that's the language that we literally put in MAPS 4. I'm worried that I just heard that language doesn't exist there, because it absolutely does. And so I'd like to, I guess, are we on the same page with that, I guess is my first question. Do we understand that there's placemaking dollars available in MAPS for those districts I just said?
We'll go back and review that.
Okay. And then when you do review that, would you, I don't know, send me an email that we heard that that's verified? Like that is so, I'm lingering on this one. I wrote that. This is important. It was the most important thing that my residents asked for when I knocked doors was placemaking. And the idea that Capitol Hill is unfunded on here is just incorrect. We funded it.
Well, I think what Justin also saying is true also, that we're very early in the program and not everything has been identified and we don't have all the projects worked out. We've got in the implementation plan, in the schedules, we've got phases, so we're still working through that.
Okay. My grave concern, and I'm going to say this right now, is that, and I started catching on to this last year when we didn't have quorums for the subcommittee for sidewalks, bikes, trails, and streetlights. My grave concern, am I wrong? On your subcommittee for sidewalk, trails, bikes, and sidewalks, you all had regular quorums. 4.
We had a couple of consecutive months where we did not have quorum.
As I said, thank you. You did not have a quorum, and when I finally did attend a meeting on that, what's happening right now in public is what I learned at that subcommittee meeting, which is that the streetscapes were seeming to disappear from the conversations. I understand, Director Todd, that there will be phases. I am not hearing yet any consideration to those streetscapes. And what I am saying right now in public is those streetscapes are not and were not an afterthought when we wrote that resolution. They were not and are not an afterthought. They are a priority. And it does not sound like they are a priority right now. And I'd like, that's what I am saying. And I know this is maybe an uncomfortable tension that I am walking us into, but it's true. So what?
But I think what Mr. Todd is also saying is to say that it's not going to happen is premature. Because, you know, it's my interpretation of what you're saying is we've got multiple phases. Just because it hasn't planned and been, just because it isn't part of a plan right now doesn't mean that it's not going to be. And so what I would suggest is let's get, because I'm not sure where Capitol Hill is in which phase.
Right, so
And let's get to
we
that
just now
phase.
started, you know, we're in the middle of design of the very first phase of sidewalks. So Councilman, give me some time to review this and I'll get back with you on it and make sure.
I would like to layer a concern on James's, specifically as it relates to Uptown 23rd, because in our experience in Uptown, which was, this streetscape was funded by a GO bond in 2017. We have had our own issues making sure and understanding the process of consistent funding, which has also included at this point Uptown 23rd on, or let me see, it was ACOG on behalf of Uptown 23rd received an additional grant to help us meet our streetscape needs. And we're still unsure what our total funding for this project will be. This has been multiple years of kind of the similar type of conversation where they tell us it's funded, we start the conversations, we find out it's really not, we might find some money somewhere else, and then now there's a grant that's actually disproportionately funding the streetscape compared to the GO bond enhancements that were originally voted and approved to be funded in Uptown, which is very similar, I think, to what happened with the sidewalks in Ward 5 in our most previous, I guess it was 2 meetings ago or so, where, again, there's voter-approved allocated dollars for a project, and then when the funding isn't where it needs to be, there are other mechanisms that are brought into play to receive the necessary funding, but then there's all of these gray areas now. We're not sure where the actual funding is. We're not sure what the actual dollar amount is. I don't know where the rest of the GO bond funding went from the Uptown project. I know I'm getting less from it now. So I'm right with you on your concern, James, of not really understanding what's funded, what's not funded. Asian District has been promised a lot of sidewalks that aren't there. Like, there's a lot of consistent frustrations that I'm hearing in your voice because I know you've had a lot more conversations than I have about this. And I am also tracking a specific concern around where is the money going, and when it changes hands or when we receive additional funds from the different silos, whatever that's looking like, how are all of those pieces communicating, and is that fair, and is it clear? And I don't think either of those things is true in this moment. I've worked with you, though, Justin, and this is not a comment on you. I know you're doing your best work to try to organize all of this.
Yeah. It has been an issue in the past, especially since the 2017 GeoBond street enhancements, that we did not enough funding to kind of fulfill the vision of what we were getting back from the districts. And so my program, one of our roles is that we apply for a lot of ACOG grants to try to get supplementary funding into those kind of projects. I haven't been involved on the ground on that project. I'm not sure how funds might have been shifted since then, but that is something we could kind of research and get back to you. Yeah.
And when you do, I'm just going to read this paragraph. I want this very publicly for everybody. I'm sorry, I'm a little upset, if I'm being honest right now, and I'm going to try and walk my way back down to joy. Paragraph 2, it is the intent of council to allocate $55 million for the construction of sidewalks, sidewalk amenities, and placemaking, including but not limited to trees, sustainable infrastructure, landscaping, drainage, and public art, prioritizing the pedestrian priority areas we just heard Justin identify, and schools identified by the Bike Walk OKC plan, as well as other districts and community assets, including the Clara Looper Corridor, Capitol Hill, Stockyards, Windsor District, Old Britain, and MAPS Youth and senior wellness centers. It could not be clearer than what I had just read.
James, I don't think anybody's questioning the language that's in the resolution. What I keep hearing is we're not there yet. That just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean that that provision is going to be ignored. And I think that it's important that you're highlighting and emphasizing and reminding this body as well as the public that the specific language was included. But I think what I'm suggesting is great job of highlighting it. Let's get there. Just because it hasn't already happened doesn't mean that provision is going to be ignored.
I appreciate your leadership on that, Chair. For clarification, that is what we heard subsequently from the director. That is not what we heard at the start of the director's remarks. He said that this language was not there, and that is why I was upset. I hear where we are now. That's good. I just need everyone to know that's not what was said earlier, and that is why someone like Chelsea and I find ourselves concerned. So I'm glad to hear we're moving in that better direction. I just cannot emphasize enough how important it is. I don't know, is there a moment where we can get some sort of, I don't need clarification, the clarification's in the resolution, but some sort of direction, some sort of.
Well, I wonder if what would be helpful, and I'm not sure we're there yet, but what component, which physical spaces are going to be in different phases? Because I think that would begin helping bring some clarity and meeting expectations.
Can I add just a point? In speaking with Gloria Torres, who serves as the director of the Capitol Hill District, I believe the construction of the plaza is funded at a cost of $2 million through the Strong Neighborhood Initiative, which are some federally block grants, and the ARPA dollars. So I think at a cost of $2 million is what I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Did that fund everything you all need, Jessica?
Not operations.
As far as the beautification subcommittee, or actually it's connectivity subcommittee, but we're in charge of beautification. We've let the contract, and we're very aware of all, I think 19 or maybe even 25 places that are named that we're going to give our attention to. So that's moving forward. And I welcome you to come to any of the subcommittee meetings you like.
You good?
I'm fine.
Okay. Please proceed with your presentation.
Sure, yeah. So something that never has political controversy, let's talk about bike lanes. So let's see. Just as kind of a refresher, something we've talked about before is in Bike Walk, we identify certain tiers of bike facility, and it's something you'll probably see in some of our the designs that are brought forward by MAPS 4. Tier 1 is something that's protected. Historically, we've mostly done those with delineators and not really a lot of other forms. But I know the MAPS office using ADG is exploring alternative ways to protect bike lanes as well. Tier 2 is just a designated space for the bike lane, but no form of protection. And then Tier 3 are shared facilities where the bike is just in the lane of traffic. You typically have a marking on the ground, but what we found in a lot of cases is those work best as street calming projects as well. If the traffic is moving slowly enough, it really increases the bicyclist safety. And so including some elements for traffic calming with those has been fruitful for making those better facilities. I wanted to throw this in real quick. It's kind of nuanced, but just as an idea of how we do facility selection type, I just showed those three different tiers. When we pick out a facility, it's largely a factor of how wide the street is, how much traffic is going down the street automotively, and the relative speed. That saying that the higher the traffic and the faster it's moving, the less likely it is that you can safely share with a bicycle, and it needs its own facility. So we'll go in kind of the weeds on that, but let me know if you have any questions. And then another thing that Bike Walk OKC does is it also prioritizes the trail needs for the city as well. Something that we've added this year as well is we already had neighborhood greenways and regional trails as a couple of types of trail. We've added this off-street multi-use trail, which is something we've kind of already been doing, but on arterial roads that are moving too fast and have too high volumes, like I mentioned, a lot of times we're already lacking in a sidewalk anyways. Some kind of facility that accommodates both pedestrians and cyclists and gives them both a safe spot to be is kind of a safer alternative for everyone. It's a little more expensive, but it does the best job of protecting pedestrians and cyclists. So don't expect anyone to be able to fully read and understand this map. I know it's a bit of a spaghetti map with lots of colors up there. Would just say that if you do take a look at Bike Walk OKC, which is out on our website, the red lines here are Tier 1 facilities, those protected type of facilities. Green would be trails. Yellow would just be bike lanes, and then the purple are those shared facilities that would hopefully have some traffic calming elements going in with them as well. I'll show that our bike network that we're kind of trying to build out, it's still fairly early days. It's kind of anchored by two main projects, which is the Grand Boulevard Loop, which is finally being finished with the Deep Fork Trail was the final element. It's something that the city's envisioned for 80 years, but we're finally finishing up. And then the Crosstown Connections, which was part of the Phase 1 bike projects approved by this body, which is kind of the long distance routes out from the center of the city to those major parts of the Grand Loop Boulevard to connect the residents who don't live necessarily in the inner core to the network.
Justin, before you move from that slide,
Sure.
what are the colored squares?
Oh, that was when we were kind of doing the drafting this. Those are just important facilities. So
Okay.
it just as an example, there on the orange box that's kind of on the south side of Grand Trail would be like the Integris Hospital, for instance, which is an
Okay.
important note.
Okay.
And then, so we've changed the bike prioritization approach in New Bike Walk OKC. The last version of the plan, it really kind of prioritized individual segments. And one of the things we've been finding as we've been building that out is a lot of times we're building really good bike facilities that aren't connected to enough things yet to get much utilization. And so we're really wanting to try to kind of focus on a lot of the connectivity kind of in the core of the city first and work our way out, making sure that we're really making all those facilities that we now have quite a few of connect to each other and operate well. And then trails, we run this through some of our responsive population modeling as well to identify which trails are the highest priority. You'll notice that some of these are some of the same elements that we've talked about for crosstown connections as well. And then next steps, we've gone through a public process. We've done presentations to a lot of boards and committees already. We anticipate coming to Planning Commission for adoption later this month, and then to City Council for adoption, probably first council meeting of February. And happy to answer any questions you have.
Any remaining questions? Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you to Justin and Max for spearheading years' worth of work. Like, you all have really done some surgical work there, and I just want to say thank you for that.
Appreciate it, yeah.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Chelsea, did you have? Oh, okay,
Sure.
go ahead.
I really appreciate your framing and your language around creating safe spaces for cyclists and pedestrians. As somebody who's been hit by a car, I've often been times feeling as though cars and car traffic are more important than my own life. So I really appreciate your scrutiny. I really appreciate this plan, and just thank you for doing your work. Same with you, Max.
Is that Sasha, you out there?
Yeah.
You too.
That's up.
You've done good work. I'm proud of you. That's really good. And really, to Chelsea's point, if y'all were uncomfortable watching me get upset, it's because I have constituents who've cars have hit, and I represent them, man. Like, that sucks, and it happens all the time. So when they're hurt and their kids are hurt, and I have people getting hit on Portland in wheelchairs 3 times by vehicles, yeah, you're darn right I'm going to get upset when I don't see us following through on the promises voters made when they said yes. So, Sasha, mostly Sasha, good job.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, moving on to item 2E, recommend approval of preliminary report, maps for animal shelter.
We have Todd Edmonds here this morning from HSE Architects to give you a presentation on what's in his preliminary report for the animal shelter.
Great. Welcome, Todd. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Again, my name is Todd Edmonds, principal with HSE Architects. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today to present our preliminary report for the animal shelter project. As you may recall, when we presented to this group last time, the new facility will be built on the same site as the existing facility. So this is the existing site plan. Grand Boulevard is on the west, South Bryant to the east, and then Southeast 29th to the south. So all of the structures here that are shown in the dark gray are existing buildings that must remain during construction of the new facility. As you can see here, there's the existing animal shelter. There's a pet cemetery right in the center of the site, as well as the Oklahoma Humane Society building to the south. And then on the far north is an Oklahoma City Police Department building. And there's also several utilities serving all of these structures coming in from Bryant and also from 29th Street. We decided to locate, after extensive study of the site, it was decided to locate the building to the north of the existing facility and just south of that Oklahoma City Police Department building. So you can see here we've located the new facility with the main entrance being off of Bryant Avenue. That will be the main customer and visitor entrance, and then off of Grand will be the entrance for all of the staff and support fleet vehicles and entering in trailers for the barn. So you can see that in this proposed site plan, the existing building has been removed, but we intend to leave the existing parking that's there on the southwest corner of the site. It's in great condition, it's concrete, it's worth saving. There are large adoption events that the animal shelter has where they can have up to 1,500 people in one day. So they can certainly use the overflow parking for their use. You can also see here that the existing cemetery is remaining, as well as the Oklahoma Animal Society Humane Society is still in place. And then that kind of pond structure, we propose to drain all of the storm drainage to that low southeast corner of the site. This is just a preliminary palette of proposed plantings. We propose to use all plantings that are native to the region, that are both drought and heat tolerant. Here's a look at the first floor plan. This first floor plan is about 60,000 square feet. In an effort to fit the building on the site around all of the existing obstacles, we also decided to move about 7,500 square feet of office space up to a second floor to reduce the footprint of the facility. So with that and the barn at 2850, the all new buildings will be a total of 70,000 square feet, which is an increase of almost 25,000 square feet over their current facility. Also, all of the animal habitats will be increased in the new facility, which is one of the major issues with the current facility. They've just outgrown the current facility. So dog kennels will increase by about 210%, and then the cat condo area will increase about just a little over 100%. So all of the public functions are on the east side of this floor plan. You can see there's kind of 4 major wings that would face Bryant Avenue. And those wings, we have a community meeting wing in the lower southeast corner. Just north of that is the adoption wing, and then north of that would be the intake wing, and then north of that, at the very top northeast corner, would be the clinic and surgery. And then everything to the west of that are all animal kennels and outdoor play areas. So I'll walk you through some of these areas in a little more detail. So you can see there's a legend up in the top corner, a key plan. So the area of the plan that we're looking at is highlighted in the red outline. So the meeting room is in the bottom left corner there. That would be a large training room that can be divided into two smaller meeting rooms. This area also has its own men's and women's restrooms and can be divided off from the rest of the facility and can be used after hours by the public. So just north of that, in the kind of light green area, is the adoption lobby. So it's a really nice large lobby to hold lots of visitors during their large adoption events. We also have in the north-south corridor, those are all adoption dog kennels that also have, it has an indoor kennel with a door that can go to an outdoor caged kennel on the outside that also has access to play yards. And then to the west of that is an adoption kennel for large dogs. So moving north on the plan, the next area would be the intake lobby. This is where a visitor would bring a surrender or a stray animal. So there's temporary dog and cat holding in this area. And once those animals have been examined, they would then be moved down that pink corridor back to either a cat or a dog stray area. There we go. So you can see, it's supposed to be yellow, but where it says stray, those areas are dog stray kennels. And then there's a wing for the for observation animals. And then the area on the end is for storage of food and other supplies. So then on the south end of that wing, go ahead, there are more kennels. Yeah, it's a little slow. So on the south end of that, there are 3 stray dog kennel areas with play yards in between each one of those. And then what we call the sally port on the far end, and that is where the animal control officers will bring stray animals and drop them off. And then the last area on the floor plan is the far northeast corner, which is the clinic. This is where you would bring an animal to be spayed or neutered or to be looked at the clinic. So there's a treatment area, and then to the west of the clinic area is the surgery area, and then we also have kennels for sick animals and a euthanasia area. So here's a look at the second floor plan. Everything that's in gray is just looking down on the roof of the first floor plan. So the colored area represents the second floor, and there should be an enlarged plan next. So here's the enlarged plan of that second floor area, which is primarily the admin area. It surrounds an open second 2-story lobby to the adoption lobby. So all of these areas would have a view through a glass wall down into the adoption lobby. And we also have a large employee break room on this floor, as well as the animal control officers' offices. This is a quick floor plan for the barn. It's very simple layout. It has 6 stalls for large animals, and then a room for poultry, 2 storage rooms, and a restroom. Quick look at the elevations. We have some renderings coming up that I'll get into the finishes in more detail, but here's an elevation, the east elevation looking from Bryant Avenue, and you can see the new barn and the pasture to the left, and then the right side is the main entrance area, which we've blown up on the lower elevation. So you can start to see the areas that I spoke about on the plan, with the meeting room entrance being on the left, adoption next, and then toward the north, the intake, and then the clinic. And all of these entrances will have a large covered canopy that will allow for overflow of visitors and their pets during events. Here's the south elevation looking from Southeast 29th Street. You can see all of the wings, starting with the Sally Port on the far left, and then all of the kennel wings with the courtyards in between. And then on the right-hand side of the plant, of the elevation, would be the side of the meeting room. You can see the second floor administration beyond in the brown color, and then the two-story lobby space over the adoption. And then here's the north elevation, similar with the kennel areas on the right, and then the side of the clinic and the administration and two-story lobby beyond. This is the back elevation, all of the overhead doors there. The four on the right enter into the Sally Port, and then the one on the left enters into the storage room. So here's a rendering to start looking at, give you an idea of what the building could look like. So this is entering in off of Bryant. So this is where all the public would enter into the building. The entrance is centered directly on the main adoption entrance. You have the covered entrance on the left, which would be the meeting space, and then to the right is intake and then clinic. Here's a closer up view of the adoption entrance, so you can start to see the finishes here. We're proposing a tongue and groove cedar soffit underneath all of these overhangs with wood trusses to kind of warm things up a little bit, make it more inviting. We'll have a standing seam metal roof over all of these elements. We have some wood accents over the main entrances of each of these areas. And then the main material on the front of the building will be a cast-in-place, what we call board form concrete. And this is a concrete that uses wood planks to form the concrete. So the grain from the wood is left in the concrete, giving it kind of a nice texture and nice feel. And then the brown material, again, is more of a stucco material that will primarily be used on the second floor admin area. And then here's a view of the adoption play yard. So this is just behind where all of the dog adoption is. I mentioned they had outdoor kennels that you could, if you're a visitor and you see a dog from the inside that you would like to meet and greet, you can go out into this courtyard and they will let the animal out into that courtyard. You can play with it and make sure that it's a good fit for you. And then there's a glass kind of corridor there. That is that connecting spine that's continuous that connects all of the dog kennel areas. And here's a view looking from the southeast. Again, this Sally Port is on the very far end, and then there's 4 kennel areas. The adoption courtyard that you just saw is the one on the very far right behind that fence. And then this, in the foreground here, is just a fence and a gate that separates the visitor parking from the staff and the fleet parking. Here's a view to start to look at what the interior will look like. So this is a view standing up on the second floor admin area, looking down into the adoption area. So you can see all the way across to the other side of the administration area. You can see a conference room up there. We're proposing to do kind of a fun frosted graphic of dogs running across the glass. And then you can see down into the administration, the adoption lobby. There's a reception desk, and then we'll have dog kennels on one side and cat kennels on the other. So finishes in this area and all of the other lobbies will be very durable finishes throughout the facility. All of the public areas will, for the most part, have polished concrete. In the dog kennel areas and clinic, we'll have an epoxy, a very durable epoxy flooring. Our countertops and finishes on cabinets will be hard surfaces such as quartz countertop. We intend to carry the wood plank ceiling and the wood trusses from the outdoor covered canopies on into these 4 major lobby spaces. And then we'll have just neutral colors for the most part with some accent colors throughout the facility, different accent colors for wayfinding. And the furniture will be very hard, plastic, durable, easy to clean, no fabrics anywhere. Here's just another view looking as you come into the adoption lobby, looking towards the reception desk. And then another view in the adoption lobby looking back towards the main entrance. So underneath the stairs there, that's what we call cat condos. So there would be several cats in that area that you can see from outside as you're approaching or from the inside. This is the intake lobby, very similar finishes to the adoption lobby with just a different accent color on the wall. So similar finishes again. And then here the clinic entrance would be very similar finishes, just a different accent color. So here's a look at the cat kennel areas. So this is what the cat kennel areas would look like. It's kind of each cat has kind of a two-story area with one has a litter box up high with a kennel, and then the other has a litter box down low with a kennel. So they're kind of L-shaped, staggered. That works very well and saves space. We'd have epoxy flooring in this area. Again, an accent color and then some very durable furniture. This is what the dog kennels would primarily look like. Similar finishes. The dog kennels get very noisy, so we'll have acoustic material on the ceiling here. It's a wood fiber product. It works well to absorb sound. The kennels themselves would typically be built with concrete block. It's hard to see in this rendering, but there's concrete block up to about 4.5 feet, and then stainless steel caging that separates between the kennels and for the front doors. Finishes, all durable. There's an example of some of the accent colors that we'll have throughout. And then here's a look at the community meeting room. It will have polished concrete flooring as well. They'll also hold training, dog training in these rooms. So durable finishes everywhere, no carpet anywhere, not even in the office spaces. So we'll have acoustic ceiling in here as well as some accent LED lighting strips. Durable furniture again, and then the administration conference room and the admin area upstairs will have very similar finishes to the meeting room. The budget for this project for construction and FF&E is just under $32 million. Our preliminary project estimate is coming in just under $31 million. And then here's our current schedule. We're reaching the end of our presentation and approval phase. After we receive approval to move to the next phase, it will begin our 120 days to finalize the plans and specifications. After a short review period, the project will go out to bid, which we assume will be about a 30-day process. And then we expect this project to break ground the summer of this year.
It's pretty
And I'll
exciting.
open for any questions.
Questions? Any questions for Mr. Edmonds?
A couple of quick questions. On the cost estimate, you have services, $10 million. What does that include? Item D.
It's a good question. I think that's for all of the equipment. We do have equipment and furnishings, but yeah, I think that's really for all of the equipment that is needed for the surgery center and the clinic.
Does it concern anybody else that we're spending $468 a square foot to build dog kennels? For the majority of the building, to me, seems pretty straightforward with the exception of the surgery area. I'm sure the number's accurate. I'm not questioning that. It just seems extraordinarily high, having bought a new house for less than half that.
Yeah, and this question, it has come up a lot during the even when we initially got the project, was initially put up to the public for a vote, it's surprising that this is a facility for animals, but there is so much plumbing and drainage and things that have to go into that. All of those kennel areas that you saw, every single one of those kennels has to have a drain, and so there's.
So perhaps that's where the services
That
is included?
all adds up.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Just an interesting figure.
Yeah, and just the durable finishes, you know, the epoxy flooring alone is shocking how much that costs per square foot.
Isn't it about $4 to $10 a square foot?
I think we were closer to 12, is that right?
12.
10 to 12.
Keeps going up, doesn't
You
it?
know, there's the epoxy that you just paint on your garage floor, and then there's this cementitious resin epoxy that is very durable and can withstand chemicals and urine and those types of things. That is much more expensive.
Thank you. And then a final question, what weight has the environmental impact of and operating procedures? What have you done to abate those costs and control them?
For the, say that again?
The cost of operating the facility, you know, like is it a green or a gold LEED type project?
Right, and we are looking for ways to assist in that. We're planning to use geothermal as much as possible. Unfortunately, because of this being an animal shelter, the mechanical systems, which they don't have now, but will be a huge improvement over what they have now. You have to have air exchange that's greater than any normal human, you know, occupied facility. So in order to get rid of the airborne smells and diseases, and geothermal is not ideal for that type of a mechanical system. So we're kind of limited to things like geothermal only in maybe the administration areas, but wherever we can, you know, include some of these things that will help lower operating costs in the future, we are doing.
Well, it looks like a great project and it looks like a quick time schedule. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I just have a comment. First, I want to say thank you to Todd and HSE for their very thoughtful approach to this project. And I also want to recognize Louisa McCune, who's in the audience today, who is a member of our neighborhood subcommittee, who has a passionate approach to this and to the care of animals in our city. And so I just wanted to thank them both for their hard advocacy work that has come into this project. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Jessica.
I'll echo that. Hey, Louisa. And I think also Brian Brown, who was a big advocate during the MAPS 4 times. And I see you're sitting with Kelly. I don't know what your connection is, but I'm sure you were very instrumental in doing some, yes? Okay, good.
So you're the reason the cats get condos. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
You know, I operate a cat condo at home. That's what my cat thinks is where we live. This might be more of a question for Louisa as we head into budget time for City Council. So part of the pitch for doing this project, right, is that we needed more space so that we would see less euthanasia, right? And we would pair that with, in terms of operations from development services, which is, of course, where animal welfare calls home, that we would be able to, it's got to be space plus a spay and neuter program. And I guess my question, while I'm so excited about this project, this is like, I just with Jessica on this, I think this is really great. I'm curious what kind of, looking at our current city budget versus what it would take to really make a dent in the spay and neutering program to really be successful. Do we have any idea what that number would look like? Because I'd like to start advocating for that very strongly at the city level, and I'll just keep advocating until we get it.
Todd, did y'all talk anything about operating expense?
No.
Okay.
Really haven't. No, that hasn't been part of our scope.
Right.
But I know they do approximately 50 surgeries a day, if you can imagine, out of their current facility.
Well, but let me point out, he has worked really close with John Gary
Oh,
out there.
absolutely.
And just the nature of this new facility is going to increase the ability to save money out there. You know, the current facility is kind of segregated and broken up. And
Right.
This will be so much more efficient just with staff.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is there, I guess what I'm asking for, and I love and respect John, he's just incredible with what he's doing. But he, in so many ways, he and his staff, right, have squeezed, you know, the last blood from the last turnip to get us to this place. My worry is the building opens, but we still don't have the funding for the appropriate number of staff that they're really gonna need to be able to get out into the community and to do the catch and release and spay and neutering. And so that's the number that I'm kind of wanting to know, is what do I need to be advocating? And while I love and respect John, like sometimes asking city staff, hey, what do you need? You know, that kind of can put them in a bit of an uncomfortable place because they're having to ask their boss for, you know, more money to do things. And I'm curious from the advocacy world right now, what do you know that would help us make sure that this building is not just a well-designed, well-executed building, but one that accomplishes the goal of making sure, I love my cat, she's 13, she's great, but she was out there in them streets. And I don't want any more of these babies like that.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I know in working with John, you know, I know our conversations throughout the design are, how do we work with the staff that he has? You know, he currently has a staff of, I think, 60 people. So we've taken that into account as we're designing the building. We've really, everything has gotten bigger, but we really haven't added any functions or that he doesn't currently have. And I think they have a very small volunteer pool currently. And in my mind, once you get a new facility that, you know, is cleaner and doesn't smell as bad as the current one, you're going to gain a lot of people that, you know, will want to volunteer and work here at this facility. So I think the volunteer group will increase tremendously. And I can't really speak to the staff other than what I know, that we're, you know, planning to work with the number of staff that he currently has.
I hope that's true. I am way more skeptical of that. I really do hope that's true. But I just know that all across our city, we have stray colonies of dogs and cats that are, it's hard for staff to get out there to go do the work that they're needing to do. And I feel it's my responsibility as a city council person to be able to provide those resources. But maybe you don't have these numbers, so I don't know, I'll just ask for more funding for them. But I would really love to be able to get like an actual concrete number that would help them. So you know what I mean? Like that's what I'm really after right now.
Councilman Cooper, I think what might be a great idea is maybe a meeting with you and Louisa and John and Todd. You guys have been working on this project for so many years, and the planning, I think that might be a great...
Next step.
Yeah, next
That's
step.
great. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, Chelsea?
Back to the dog kennels. So looking at all the photos and all the things, this is a beautiful design for a situation that we definitely need more support in, especially post-COVID conditions. I think a lot of people have considered their relationship with their pets and things. There's a lot going on that I think there's going to be a huge need for this. And as I look at these photos and I see, these beautiful conditions for adoption for the cats and the condos and all these things, and I look at the stray dog kennels, that looks like corporal jail to me. So I'm curious if there's any research or other structures by way of kenneling dogs that maybe could cut some of these costs per square foot and also don't quite include so much look like it's a jail cell kind of situation.
Yeah, that rendering probably is deceiving because you're standing at one end and you just see all that caging together. In person, it probably doesn't look quite as intrusive to you. But we have increased the size of all the kennels to what the standard recommended kennel size is, which is considerably larger than what they have. The kennels are also connected with a guillotine door, so you can, if you're not at capacity, you can open that door to where a dog would have twice as much space than they would normally have. So Ultimately, it would be almost, I guess, 4 feet by 12 feet long, a dog run in these indoor kennels. And then we've also added a lot of natural light. In their current facility, they're in large rooms, concrete block rooms with no windows. And so the way that we've designed those kennel wings, it allows us to have windows down both sides of those wings, which brings in natural light into every kennel area, which makes a tremendous difference for the health and well-being of the animals.
I appreciate that, thank you. I think maybe my thought process is a little beyond the scope of the project, since there might be recommended sizes for kennels. I'm thinking dogs are one of the most social creatures that exist, and yet we're still separating them, and cats are not very social, and they're all together. But it's just kind of my brain is a little bit like, there feels like there could be a newer approach, but that might even be down the line that we're not.
And we do have some larger kennels that we purposely, some dogs might have siblings, or they might just get along well with other dogs. So we have some that are 2 times or 3 times as large as the normal single ones. We've taken out the walls in between to purposely make a larger kennel space for those dogs that can, get along with other dogs or have siblings. So we've thought through that as well. There is a lot of anxiety too with the dogs in these spaces. So keeping them, giving them more private spaces for a lot of animals is better than having them be exposed to the other dogs. Yeah, it creates anxiety.
Yes, this creates anxiety, the look of this to me, so.
Yeah.
Well, that's why the staff and the volunteers, from what I've learned, and point very well taken, but that's why when I took a tour of the existing facility after I first won 4 years ago, that's why getting them out for regular walking and out in that green space is just vital, because if the barking and these sorts of things, it increases that anxiety, and then thusly can sometimes make them less adoptable, right? Because that socialization falls away. So that's why I'm kind of obsessed with this volunteer and staff number. So I really appreciate Jessica's recommendation on that. So.
Right. Anything else? Great. Todd, thank you. I think this
Thank
is
you.
an exciting project that we're really,
Appreciate it.
as a city, ready to see happen. Okay, so with that presentation, whoa.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. We've got a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 2F, recommend approval of amendment number 1 to architectural services contract with Alford Hall, Monaghan and Morris for the Family Justice Center, an increase of $20,000.
When we negotiated this contract for architecture, we didn't anticipate a commercial kitchen. And during design, it is become evident that they need a commercial kitchen. And with a commercial kitchen, there's a need for a kitchen consultant. So this amendment is for them to hire a kitchen consultant.
Okay? Any additional questions?
It comes with the approval from the subcommittee.
Okay. Take a motion in a second. Please cast your votes. Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 2G, recommend approval of amendment number 2 to engineering services contract with Kimley Horn and Associates for the MAPS 4 bus stop improvement phase 1 for an increase of $48,000.
And so this is an amendment for the bus stops. We have asked this consultant to do so many changes on their plans as we've worked through the project in order to get some of the bus stops out sooner. We asked them to remove the bus stops that needed right-of-way so that we could work on that. And then subsequently, we've asked them to remove the structures, the structure purchase, because we were going to purchase those through another contract, and the installation will be with another vendor. So there's just been a lot of changes that we've asked them to do, and we think this is a fair number based on all the work that we've asked them to change.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay. Take a motion in a second. Please cast your votes. Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 2H, recommend approval of change order number 8 for the MAPS 4 Fairgrounds Coliseum for an increase of $90,967.
So I can tell you that the subcommittee saw an update on the Fairgrounds Coliseum. Everything is going great. They've got the seating concrete in. It's starting to look like a coliseum. You can still go out to that link that I sent you and see the video and see the current status of that. But along with that comes change orders as we move along with the project. There's some additional plumbing equipment, and this has to do with the soda system. You know, those soda systems are plumbed throughout the building. So there were some changes in that. Mechanical equipment revisions, just duct work that runs into structural. They did a great job on identifying that, but still some things come up. Some additional door hardware. There's a credit for bar beverage display. External defibrillators were left off the plan, so that's to add that. Access control power and equipment, so the low voltage that controls the locks on doors. There were 7 doors that were left out. And then there's a credit for an escalator modification. So they went through all this with the subcommittee in detail, and they approved it.
Any comments, Kevin or Bob? Okay. So with that, take a motion in a second, if there's no other questions. Okay. Please cast your votes. Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 2I, authorize staff to use MAP 4 connectivity funds to investigate and/or apply for grants to supplement the MAPS 4 bus stop improvements budget.
So these next 2 items are similar, but they're different. And this is unusual. It's unusual and a bit ambiguous, but we have opportunities to apply for grants and apply for additional funding. And I think that everybody would be in favor of that. And the reason this is on there is I want everybody to understand there are costs, so to speak, that come with that. And that being mostly timing and some control. So the first one would be for bus stops. And there are some opportunities for some grants out there, but those grants don't happen right now. They happen at certain times in the year. So we could see delay on executing and building the bus stops. That's all I really want to put out there. Make sure, I didn't want to do a whole bunch of work on pursuing grants and then you say, no, we don't want to delay the projects. We think it's more important that we build them on time rather than build more. I think this is a good opportunity for us to meet the goals that we have by getting these grants. Again, I just want to make it clear that it could delay the project some.
So, David, do you have an idea or a feel for the length of delay? Are we thinking 6 months? Are we talking 2 years?
It could be a year.
Okay, a year.
6 months to a year, somewhere in there. It's all different. It depends on where we are and when the grants come around. And we could apply for stuff and wait and then not get awarded.
Right. Right. Are there some of the bus stops, because it's phased, will we move ahead with some of those that are currently engaged and just kind of take a little bit of a pause on the next phase or so?
As you've seen, we are going to come up short with the 500 number that has previously been talked about.
Right.
And this will be an opportunity for us to reach that number.
Yeah. So did this go before the connectivity?
It did.
Subcommittee?
They didn't have a quorum, but yes, it went.
Okay. My thought is that it's worth trying to meet the full expectation. I know 6 months to a year is 6 months to a year, but in a 10-year-long project or program, to be able to meet the full capacity
And-
of
and
the
in this-
expectation, I think is worth it.
Yeah, in this case, if it's a grant, it actually allows us to do projects that we weren't going to get to do anyway. So
Yeah,
this one doesn't affect things as much.
okay. Any other questions or comments, concerns?
I'm guessing these are federal grants, or are they?
Yes.
Chelsea?
I suppose I'm concerned because it seems to be the same pattern. We're not funded adequately. We need to seek funding from a different source. Upon seeking funding from a different source, we might delay the project, which who knows at that point if it's adequately funded. So I think that's my just general concern in the process of the delay is, I'm glad to hear that we'll continue constructing projects as we can, but the pattern is the same pattern I think I've been concerned about with the stadium situation and the recent TIF announcement, also with the previous situation with the MAPS funding in Ward 5 as it pertains to bike lanes. So I'm expressing this concern. I don't have a solution for the concern, but I'm expressing this concern.
Well, the solution is that we're getting additional funds to do things that we wouldn't be able to do. The alternative is, in this bus stop example, we just can't do them. We run out of money.
Right, and my concern is in 6 months, we'll also need more money to do it again.
Well, we always need money, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think,
Oh, I'm sorry.
well, I think Chelsea's concern is valid. I hear what you're saying, Director Todd. It's just that we don't know that we'll get it. But I do think we should take the shot. You miss every shot you don't
Yeah.
take. Is that the?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jesse. So, no, I think that's fair. I guess I have a couple questions. Which bus shelters find themselves under construction in the interim?
I don't have that answer as we sit here. We do the ones, like I said, that we didn't have to go out and purchase right away because that's slowing things down also. But I don't have specific examples. I'm just talking in general that will this board support this method?
I think sometime at one of our meetings within the next 6 months, it would be useful to kind of hear from you or Embark about like where we are able to construct, what we're able to construct.
No, you'll see that real soon when we bring final plans, and it'll list all the stops that we'll have, and we'll bring you information as we apply for grants and all this additional money. I'll bring it to you. I just didn't want to start doing it and find out that you weren't interested.
Right.
And then I can say I also spoke with Director Fairbrush yesterday, just to give you all an update, and I think some of this delay might actually work in our favor, but I think you might recall when I went to Seattle last year with the Transit Trust and the bus shelter murals, the artwork that they were doing on those shelters to kind of identify neighborhood and community history. That's something that we're still looking at, and actually staff's already been exploring other municipalities that are doing that. So maybe this would give us some time to
Yeah.
do that right.
See
So
that together. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. If not, I would take a motion in a second to approve. Please cast your votes. Motion passes. Thank you. And finally, moving to item 2J, authorize staff to use MAPS 4 sidewalks construction funds to leverage matching funds for additional sidewalks.
So this one's a little different, that it would go through a different process. I'm not going to summarize the whole process, but what ultimately could happen is that we could do the design and then get it funded and give it to another organization like ODOT, and they would handle the construction, and that would be the last we see of construction. And there's another program there that we would just sign up basically for an 80-20 type match. We'd pay 20%, they'd pay 80, but they hire the consultant, they do the design, and they do the construction. So it completely leaves the MAPS process. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I've personally done projects that way when I was in private practice. The city does it all the time. Again, I just want everybody here to understand that's the trade-off
Right.
that you get. Now, I'm not advocating that all sidewalk money go that way. I don't even think that there's that kind of funding that we could get. But anytime we can extend our money by getting 80% from another source, the city always supports that.
Well, and I'll first say thank you for exploring all of these options to extend and stretch our dollars. You know, you think $1 billion goes a long way, but it doesn't go as far as it used to, right? So thank you for looking for creative ways to leverage those funds. Two questions. One, would the specific sidewalks that would be a part of this matching program come through the MAPS process? So we identified the space, but then the project itself is executed by this third party? Okay. And then two, would the matching relationship be on a project-by-project basis?
Yes.
That we would review and approve? Okay,
Yes.
okay. Other questions?
Two. One, those were great questions, by the way. So when we make those decisions, let's say we're able to secure the funding, ODOT's still going to put the stamp of approval for MAPS 4 on the sidewalks, or since they're no longer?
Don't know. I would try to do that, yeah, but I don't know.
Because that would be important. Because again,
sure.
we've talked about why.
I'll sneak out there at night and put it in the concrete myself.
Do not tempt me with a good time. I will actually do that, so long as it's legal. You know, so my lawyer out there, it's great. City's lawyers, I don't have like my own personal lawyer. And then two, and I think this is a question for Justin, actually, if you wouldn't mind. It was something that got lost because I went deep into streetscapes, but we invited you here because of a question Daisy had at one of the meetings. Could you explain to us, help us better understand, and it's gonna end up affecting this project too, but like, so Bike Walk has identified, correct me where I'm wrong, it's identified priority phase 1, phase 2, here's why, it's arterial, it's a school, it's senior wellness, whatever it might be. Is the way we approach securing the funding, once you all have identified, is whichever funding source becomes available first, whether it's MAPS, the bond, a grant? Is this about right? That's that we go, okay, then whatever was identified as a priority, phase 1, whatever funding becomes available, that's what we're grabbing. Or correct me if I'm wrong, because I think that was part of our concern. It's like, well, why were there projects from a different part of town that got elevated up? And so if you could just kind of clarify that, and I'm sure Daisy will probably have questions from that too. Or maybe she won't, I don't know.
Sure. Yes, broad strokes, you're right. We kind of follow that prioritization as we recommend projects. There is some nuance between different funding sources because we see the different rules for different funding sources. So one of the, I think the main grant opportunities talked about and really look at here is ACOG. They have a lot more money coming through because of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. There's a lot more money flowing through ODOT to ACOG for bicycle and pedestrian projects through STBG and TAP programs. But they have specific criteria, and they have a very kind of complex scoring system for projects. So what we largely do is we take all of our high-scoring projects, we run all of them through and see what pops out to be the highest scoring for ACOG, and then we submit projects that we think are going to do the best. So it's always going to be something that was a high need in Bike Walk, but for instance, we've recently been just this last cycle, we applied for $40 million worth of STBG projects of all these various types. Some of them you'd see in phase 2, some you'd see in phase 1 of Bike Walk OKC. But that's because they scored really high, and we think we maximize our opportunity to return as many dollars as we can, because we're competing against the other cities in the metro area for those. They also have a limitation that a lot of those funds through STBG can only be applied for certain street types. So you can only apply for something that's on an arterial or collector. You can't go for like local roads. If that makes any sense.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
I guess my question was that MAPS $4 won't be distributed to other projects if it's like 100% sure that that project is funded through whatever other funding source, correct? Or not?
Okay,
Yeah.
wait.
That-
Say that again.
Yes, MAPS 4 funding
right.
for certain projects won't be redistributed to other projects
So they,
unless
right.
we have 100% like clearance that that project is funded through other funding sources, is what ultimately my question was. Because
Right.
from the previous question was that it did make application, but then the funds were redistributed
Right.
without knowing, or maybe now it has been, the grant was awarded, was it?
Oh, speaking of Santa Fe Trail
Yes.
specifically, no, it hasn't been awarded yet. It's
Yeah.
usually revealed in February.
And then the recommendation to remove that funding from that specific project was approved and passed, and that was kind of my whole conversation, was that why would we remove that funding from that specific project if it's not funded through this grant yet?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think,
We can always come back and add it back to a project, you know?
yeah, if it, for some reason, it doesn't get awarded through the grant, yeah, the project's going to be completed. It's kind of, it sounds like it's kind of jockeying between which pot of money and timing.
Yeah, and that was clearly my question was that, like, why are we removing this funding from this project if it's not 100% approved
right.
and awarded for this project, and then leave that project not funded or whatever?
Yeah, there was some complication on the crosstown connections, especially because that was originally started as a bond project and it was underfunded, and we knew that. And so, since it was at the top bike priority, we went to MAPS and asked the connectivity subcommittee if they wanted to fund that. The Santa Fe Trail portion has stayed with Public Works, so they're continuing with a design with Kimley Horn to continue to design out that project. So it's still under design. It's just with Public Works instead of with MAPS right now.
By the way, that was a super helpful clarification moment, and I just think that probably as we go forward, it's just probably going to be useful, just as you invited them to come today, kind of these periodic updates from you all about, why, where we are and what we're applying for grant-wise and why this project and that project. I just think that's useful stuff. Otherwise, these sort of narratives can start to,
Right.
you're going to say
Well, and
something.
I think what you're getting to is how it would be helpful for us to understand more complete, full context of the various pots of money to get all of the projects done. I mean, we only are involved with the MAPS $4, obviously, but the full context
Yep.
on some of this would be helpful.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Moving on to item 3, discussion items.
Going to vote on that?
Oh, I am so sorry. We need to vote on that
J.
2J. Motion in a second. My apologies. Please cast your votes. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Now, moving on to item 3, discussion items. Do we have anything for discussion?
No.
Okay. Item 4, MAPS 4 Citizens Advisory Subcommittee reports. Any subcommittee reports want to share? Anything from venues, connectivity, neighborhoods? Okay. All right. Moving on to item 5, update status of MAPS 4 program. Mr. Todd.
So I mentioned the Fairgrounds Coliseum, how great it's going. If you're out that way, encourage you to swing by and see it. We've got a whole lot of projects in design, so late spring, early summer, you're going to have several ribbon cuttings, or groundbreakings to go to.
Thank you for delaying winter.
The other thing is that it was announced that the operator for the multipurpose stadium has identified a site, and they're trying to get some additional funding on that, and that will come back to the subcommittee and to this advisory board for confirmation. But I think most of you have seen that, or I sent you an email explaining some of that. So that's exciting that we've got that finally moving and can get that started.
Well, and I don't mean to
No.
interrupt you, but from some of the comments that I have received or questions that I've asked, just want to be clear that the 41 million that was included in the resolution did not contemplate land, that was construction. Went back and looked at that. So I think this was kind of part of what the thought process was for, because I've had somebody say, how did it go from 40 to 70? Where are you getting the extra money? And that wasn't, that is not what the case was.
Yeah, it was always contemplated that they had to provide the land.
Right. I'm sorry. And
No, that's
I
it.
interrupted
No,
you. Okay.
that's it.
Is there any kind of approval through this body or the venues, and then it goes to
Yes.
council?
Yes.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah, we will still follow the MAPS process, but it was kind of a chicken and an egg. I mean, if they had brought, if the operator had brought a piece of property as a location but didn't have funding, the first thing that body is going to say is, how are you going to fund it? So had to go through that piece so that it is a viable location to consider, but to go through the MAPS process. So, okay. Okay, moving on to item 6, comments by board, staff, and citizens. Do we have any citizens signed up? Great. Any staff comments?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Any comments by the board? Bob?
Just a quick first of the year observation that when we started out, we were all kind of worried. We don't have anything to do. There's nothing going on. It's a very slow process, and David and Teresa have reminded us from day one that the time would come that we were going to start seeing a lot of activity, and that's very evident today. But I just wanted to observe how much I appreciate the expertise, the knowledge, the thoughtfulness of the members of this board addressing these issues that come up. I know from my experience with MAPS 3, sometimes I felt like we were just rubber stamping things, but not that there was any downside to that. It was appropriate to do that because it had been so thoughtfully prepared and presented to a subcommittee or a board. But MAPS 4, as we've known from the beginning, would be a little bit different because of the more subjective nature of some of the projects and the difficulty, homelessness, for example, of dealing with those issues. It's not a thing that can be simply handled with a brick and mortar solution. And so I really do appreciate all the knowledge and expertise this board is beginning to demonstrate as we move into these projects. And it's very exciting, it's very comforting, very pleasing that we have that ability, and I think we're trying to do our job for the citizens, and I hope they appreciate what this group of people is doing.
Thank you for those comments, Bob. And I would echo that. This is a great group of people. Also noting that we're beginning a new year, and I very much appreciate everybody being here. We've got a strong presence today. At the end of every calendar year, I get a report of quorum, those of people subcommittees that have made quorum and that haven't, who's attended, who hasn't. So I would just, as we ramp up and are having more and more activity, fully understand this is a volunteer role, but your engagement as much as possible in both the subcommittees and this board, these meetings, is so critically important to the success of this program. So thank you so much for the time that you dedicate, and we're going to have a great year. 2024 is going to be a fun year. So if there's nothing else, we are adjourned.